If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or like the wounds from your past still hold you back, you're not alone. This space is for you. Here, we heal, we grow, and we rediscover who we truly are. Beyond the pain, beyond the past.
Well, first of all, in my world, there's no shoulds, okay?
There's no?
There are no shoulds.
There's no shoulds, yeah.
So I would never say to anybody, you should, because that itself is intrusive. So the question is whether it's helpful or not to delve into the past depends on what's happening with that individual. And if some of the effects of trauma, as we said earlier, is that the wounds of the past keep showing up in the present. So from my point of view, it's not so much about delving into the past and dwelling on the past, but on dealing with how the past is showing up in the present. What a psychologist friend of mine, Peter Levine, calls the tyranny of the past, where the past dominates my present reactions. It doesn't matter how many times I go back and think about my childhood story, that's not going to help me. What I have to deal with is what's happening in me right now at this very second, which is a shadow of the past. So thinking about it is not going to be of much help. What's going to help is to deal with the emotions that are arising now as a result of what happened and how those emotions affect my life in the present moment. So it's not about the past, it's about the present.
Yeah, so it's really about the choices we have now.
Exactly, what's available to us now.
Yeah, what's available to us now, because I feel like we didn't have a choice in the past because we were either too young or too incapable of making a choice.
Exactly.
But the choices that happen right now can transform everything.
It is possible. Some people do make themselves into victims. They kind of identify with the victim role. All this stuff happened to me, and therefore I cannot do such and such, or I'm hurt and I'll never get over it. It's possible to identify with the victim role. It's even possible to identify with the survivor role. I'm a survivor. Well, no, that's not who you are. You survived, but who you are is much greater than that particular experience, and who you are is always much greater than your suffering.
Yeah.
And so it is possible for some people to identify with the suffering and the past to such a degree that they stop moving forward.
Yes. Studied the mind, you studied addiction, you studied healing, you studied trauma. Why is it that we seek certainty and stability when you earlier also said that the only time we experience growth is the opposite, when we're vulnerable? Why is it that we're so addicted to things staying the same or things not changing? Like, that seems to be a core human addiction.
Well, a therapist once said to me that it has to do with the nature of the mind that you're referring to. A therapist once said to me that if your parents didn't know how to hold you, you develop the mind you hold yourself with. So you find safety in this mind that you created. And so the human mind, the ordinary egoic human mind, is basically a defensive structure. It's, in significant ways, it's a response to pain. That's not all it is, but in significant ways, it's a response to pain. It's afraid of pain, and it's designed to keep you from experiencing pain. So it's worried and it's anxious and it's defensive. So when it comes to change and vulnerability, the mind wants to defend against it. And so it comes out of fear, which comes out of childhood experience where the pain that you had wasn't held. And therefore you develop these mind structures to keep you from experiencing it. And I mean, one of them clearly is addiction. And, Keith Richards, the world's most famous former heroin addict, the Rolling Stone guitarist, said about addiction, for example, his heroin use, that the contortions you go through just not to be yourself for a few hours. Now, why would somebody not want to be themselves? Because it hurts so much at some point to be yourself. And then a mind comes in and tries to protect you from that pain of being yourself with its ideas and its beliefs and its certainties and its endless desires and its artificial needs. And it's our fate to let go. Because if I let go, I'll be a helpless child again. So the mind largely is a defensive structure, and then often will react that way. Nobody is an addict. That's not who they are. The addiction was a pattern of behavior which came along, as we pointed out before, to soothe some kind of pain. So it'd be more accurate to stand up and say, hello, my name is Gabor, or my name is Drew, and I've had pain in my life which I've soothed through this particular behavior. But that's not who I am. That's just my behavior. That's just my coping mechanism. That'll be more accurate. And yeah, that's where awareness comes in.
So once awareness, the next component, which a big part of awareness is getting connected to, there was pain first. And that pain created the void to go with lack of awareness or with unconsciousness to go find things to put into that void. So is the next component to begin to unravel the pain?
Well,
heal the pain?
You know, there's no one size fits all. But for me, if we don't go there, if we simply focus on the behaviors, you know, you're a drinker and you want to stop drinking, well, that's good. But very often that hasn't dealt with the fundamental addiction process in your brain. You've just stopped a certain behavior. And very often people that stop one behavior, they go into another. People who stop smoking very often will put on weight. Why? Because that emptiness is still there. So for me, while it's good to work on the behaviors, obviously, ultimately healing has to do with working through that pain and working through the trauma and finding your deeper, truer self underneath all that. Which, by the way, if you look at the word recovery, I mean, I say this all the time, it's almost a cliche, but recovery, what does it mean to recover something? It means to find it. You've lost contact with something, you've lost touch with it, and you've found it, so you recovered it. So when we say I've recovered, what have people recovered? And if you talk to people who've been through addictions, and you ask them, well, what did you recover? What did you find? Oh, I found myself. So that's what ultimately recovery is. But to do that, you have to work through the pain, for sure.
It's one of my favorite messages from Eckhart Tolle and A New Earth is that it's in the nature of humanity and largely consciousness to have something, lose it, find it again, but find it at a deeper level with true meaning that it cannot be lost. So we have these things, we lose them, and then we step back into them. I think of that in the context of recovery.
Yes. Let me read you a quote from Karl Marx, if I could.
Please.
And he says, the world has long dreamed of possessing something of which it has only to become conscious in order to possess it in reality. The world has been longing for something of which it only has to become conscious in order to really have it. In other words, it's here. You just have to become conscious of it. That gaining of consciousness is it. So for me, all the work that I do, whether it's on physical illness or mental illness, not that there's any separation, addiction, whatever, child development, parenting, it's all about how do we become conscious of what's already in here, but we've lost sight of it.
Yes, both on the individual level and on the society level, and a good part of your work.
What we just heard from Dr. Maté reminds us that healing isn't about reliving the past, but about how those wounds still echo in our lives today. And what makes his message even more powerful is that he doesn't just speak as a teacher, he shares from his own life. In this next part, you'll see how even he, after decades of studying trauma, still faces the hidden weight of the past. That honesty is what makes this journey so real.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Really nice to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And I'm wondering, the last 2 years, something seems to have shifted in our culture and in our world, where all of a sudden I'm seeing people of all ages reading about trauma. What do you think shifted? That
Phenomena that's not restricted to me personally. I think this is a society in crisis. And one sign of the crisis is that people are getting more split and more ideologically hostile. Because they feel more scared and they become more rigid and defensive. That's some part of the population. But then other people are starting to ask what's going on here. And the usual explanations just no longer serve us. So the information that underlying much of physical illness or mental illness for sure, addictions, is trauma, is not new. The science has been accumulating for decades, but people haven't been asking the questions. Now people are starting to ask, what's going on here? People are asking why.
Yeah.
And the usual explanations, oh, addiction is a genetic disorder, really? Then how come the numbers are going up all the time? These genes don't change in a population. In other words, people's curiosity and desire to know is catching up with reality.
Yeah. And I think actually that's what, when I talk to people, Gabor, some of what people are so...
That is how I see it, but it's also how science happens to see it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not simply a matter of trying to find a compassionate approach. It's a matter of trying to look at something. Mindfulness practitioners or spiritual adepts, you'll find that truth has to do with objectivity, and truth always lines up with compassion for some reason.
Yeah. And some people think that if they take on the notion that I choose to do drugs, therefore I can choose not to do drugs, that it's like a question of like, it's empowering for me to say like, I'm choosing now to do this, I can choose not to do this. Where do you see the role of choice in that? And if we haven't worked on our trauma, do we really have choice? Or how do you orient in that question?
Well, when you were caught up in whatever addiction had you in its thrall, how much choice did you experience?
How much?
Choice did you experience?
Not much.
Yeah. So we can talk about choice in the abstract, and in the abstract we all have choice. Or we can talk about choice in reality, which means how much freedom does a person have to make a choice. And freedom is not simply an external factor. In fact, significantly, it's an internal factor. It requires consciousness. I think you've had Eckhart Tolle here, have you?
Yeah, Eckhart a few times.
Yeah. It says that without consciousness, there's no freedom. That's one of his statements. And I totally agree with that. So the question of choice has to me, how much consciousness do I have in a given moment? And it's not just a general question, it's also in a given moment, how much consciousness do I have? Because at times I have terrific freedom, and believe me, I can get into emotional states where choice doesn't even appear on the horizon. And the unconscious, this is where trauma comes in again, is very much like a puppet master that pulls us on a string. We have as much freedom as a puppet does when the unconscious takes over. So to me, choice, the real issue with choice when it comes to addiction or anything else is how do we promote people's freedom?
Yeah.
so that they can have actual choice.
Right. Right. Yeah, Eckhart talks about it like the pain body. There's a pain body that kind of like takes you over.
Yeah.
So, and I think at the heart of kind of one approach is that if there's an underlying wound or trauma,
That's
and
right.
that as long as that can be dormant for a while, right? We might be able to behave in the world and function, but something happens and all of a sudden that dormant trauma becomes triggered and activated, and then all of a sudden a different part of ourselves come out. And I'm wondering, how do you begin to identify what the real source of that is? Like when you're getting trauma ignited. Like I can feel pissed off about a lot of different things at different times,
Yeah.
but there's a certain pissed off that has a certain energy or charge to it that feels different to me. It feels like it comes from more than just the situation at hand.
Well, when I teach my students in compassion inquiry, one of the insights I want them to understand is that whenever there's tension, it requires attention. Whenever there's tension, now I wish I could follow that teaching. It's a beautiful teaching, if only I could follow it sometimes. But whenever there's tension here, you pretty much know that you're dealing with the past. Now, how do you get at the sources of the past and what actually happened? Well, there's a whole lot of ways to do it. Many therapeutic modalities, talking therapy or somatic therapy of Peter Levine's, or sensory motor therapy of Pat Ogden, or my compassion inquiry, or hypnosis, or psychedelics, or any one of these things, in internal family systems of Dick Schwartz. But pretty much any time you realize that your present physiological, emotional state seems out of proportion to what's actually going on in the present, you know that you're in the grips of the past.
Got it. Wow. And when you notice that in yourself, how do you work with that? We had talked backstage. You went through a tough couple months. I know you did something with Prince Harry that a lot of people got all activated by. And everybody can relate to feeling activated by things. And I think when you're a public figure, it's even more intense, right? Because there's thousands of people who can get activated. And I'm curious, how do you navigate when you feel that in yourself?
Or anybody else's. I've been very much in the grips of the past. So I don't want to sit here and pretend that you listen to some kind of an expert who's got it figured out. I don't. I mean, I do understand it, but working it through, I've realized recently again, it's an ongoing process and far from complete in my case.
Yeah.
But the Prince Harry thing was interesting. I mean, those of you. By the way, I should give you a warning here. So I interviewed Prince Harry, and the London Sunday Times wrote an article, and they said, "Don't trust a man who's wearing many rings." Okay, so I'm wearing these same 3 rings that I wore with Andrew. If anybody doesn't trust me, leave. You can get your money back. Okay? if you think I'm wearing too many rings, but the reaction to that interview in much of social media and particularly the British gutter press, which included some of the most famous papers in Britain, was really hostile.
Yeah.
And I thought I was past it.
Yeah. Past being affected by that.
Past being affected by it. Yeah. And I was surprised how much it got to me.
Yeah.
And especially when you don't have the opportunity to respond immediately, Right. And I called up a colleague, a very well-known colleague or friend, a psychiatrist, actually Dan Siegel. Many of you know his work. Yeah. And
He's been here before. Yeah. Yeah.
do you have to keep rubbing it in?
Sorry. Sorry.
Well, he should have been here. And there's a wonderful. Do you know the book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Charlie McKeesey. And has he been here?
No.
Okay. And in the book, the horse is the most grounded of the four friends. And one of them asked the horse, "What's the most courageous thing you've ever said?" And the horse says, "Help."
Wow.
It's so hard to ask for help.
Yeah.
But you know what? In the aftermath of this hairy thing, I said, I need help here.
Yeah.
So Dan and I had a conversation. And he said, what is it about this whole thing that upset you so much, that got to you so much? And you and I were talking about this dynamic before we came on stage here. And I said, it's not being seen. Having a distorted view of me.
Yeah.
And he said, and of course this is precisely where I would take anybody else that I was talking to, but I couldn't get there myself without somebody prompting me.
Yeah.
And Dan said, well, when you were an infant, and this is true for me, when you were an infant, and those that don't know, I was a Jewish infant under the Nazis in Hungary. When you're an infant, not being seen threatened your life.
Wow.
And I said,
Wow.
I got it.
Yeah.
And there was an immediate release
Wow.
of that tension,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
So it can show up this many years later in a completely different form and still...
And the relief was just seeing the original, the original kind of source, if you will.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the question?
When you said you experienced relief, was the relief seeing the source or close?
Yeah, I get it now. This is what's going on. And actually, I'm not threatened by any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Who cares what says about whom? I mean, that doesn't threaten me.
Yeah, got it.
But as long as I'm caught in that dynamic of not being seen, threatens my life, literally. It felt like it.
Yeah.
You know, the upset was really disproportionate.
Healing takes time, and you don't have to do it alone. If this message resonated with you, know that your journey matters. Be gentle with yourself. Keep exploring and surround yourself with support. Healing takes time, and before you go, comment, I am healing to affirm your growth. You are seen. You are valued. And you are not alone. And before you go, comment, I am healing to